Okay, all right. I think I'm live now. I've just been talking for the past 3 minutes to myself because I didn't click the go live button. But if I am live and you can hear me, let me know in the comments. Say hello. I'm going to repeat myself now, but you won't know that. So good evening if you're joining me from the UK/Europe/Africa. Good day if you're joining me from the States, and hello to everyone in between those time zones. It's good to have you. He running on CPT. I don't know what is that colored people time. I don't normally I'm like I start right on the minute, but I actually didn't click the go live button. So like I said, I was talking to myself for the past 3 minutes, but I'm here now. Let me know if the audio is good. This shouldn't be a long stream, famous last words, but it really shouldn't be. Because we've kind of covered this topic already, and really this live stream is a bit of an excuse for me to unveil some reconstruction updates that I've done. So that's really what the motive behind this stream is. What's going on, everybody? I think there's one of the archers in the comments. Good to have you. A couple. How you guys all doing? So today's live stream, the focus really is to unveil some updates I did to my Amenhotep III reconstruction, and I did these in line with some comments actually that Cicero Moraes made when he was online, because it's something that I do. Those of you who are familiar with my King Tutankhamun reconstruction will know that I've also overlaid that reconstruction with his skull from both angles, so it's very anthropometrically sound. And if you joined me on my Tuesday's live stream Sunday's live stream, if you join me on my Sunday's live stream where we looked at the reconstruction of Tutankhamun that they did, we pointed out the fact that the craniometric proportions of his skull have got a lot of traits that are specific to Africans of the Nile region. So these kind of Nile dwelling African groups, right from the Great Lakes right up to the Delta, they have specific phenotypic traits, East Africans, that are very uncanny, and it's impossible, or at least I'd say not impossible, it's really stupid to not assign those traits when you see them to Africans. It's ridiculous to give them to any other group. Not only the craniometrics, we also focused in on the anthropometrics, the bodily proportions, and we looked at papers that proved they were indisputably African, and this has been proven on a mathematical basis. So it's not just a observational basis. It's the fact that you can only calculate their limb proportions when you use the anthropometrics of other Africans. If you try to use Eurasians or Asians or any other group, you will consistently get errors in the calculations of their bodily proportions. So that says that they cluster with other black Africans. Okay, that's just a fact. And so it's important that we kind of have that anthropological understanding, and the fact that when I do these reconstructions, obviously that's the start of my process is very much let me know if someone's just said the volume is low. I don't think it should be, but if it's low, let me know. The start of my process was very much just kind of, I look at the statues and I saw really good artwork, so I thought, why aren't people using the portraiture when they make reconstructions? But obviously I've been afforded the opportunity to then start applying a bit of science and saying, actually, well, if I'm got to claim that these reconstructions these people look like they're statues, then the reconstruction should complement / overlay with the skeletons, should overlay with their mummies. It's neither here nor there. I can't essentially turn around and say, I believe this pharaoh looked like this, and then I try and put it over the mummy and it doesn't work. That kind of makes my entire premise fallacious. So when I started doing this, the brilliant thing is that it worked, obviously, and I was even set back and shocked at how well it worked. So, but the earliest one I did it with was King Tutankhamun. Overlay was perfect. Then I did it with Queen T. Overlay, once again, perfect, absolutely perfect. So with that in mind, I started thinking, okay, well, whenever there's a mummy present, then I should make a habit out of doing that. So going back to this, what we see on the screen, in terms of they can't both be right, this Amenhotep III reconstruction that's been done by Cicero Moraes over here, which, as you know, if you've been on the 2 streams since Sunday, I'm obviously not a fan of. It essentially just looks like I said, a modern day kind of Turkish man. It bears no resemblance. I mean, you can see the image that I've referenced here, and this isn't me cherry picking, by the way. This is me looking for an image of Amenhotep III with wearing the Capresh, because of what I wanted to represent on this kind of screenshot. This isn't cherry picking. He looks like this in all of his photos. He's a very, very consistently portrayed individual. So for them to know that this is how he's portrayed consistently, and to not even carry across the complexion. Let's play devil's advocate and assume that they really believe that what they're doing here is the truth. Okay, they believe that these features are a true representation. For them to not even carry over the skin complexion that has been left on several wall paintings, stele artwork, bas reliefs, etc. For them to not even carry over that element, and to carry over this super pale complexion, which, by the way, they actually quoted themselves as being dark. They said, we made him dark because we didn't want any of the race controversies. Like, what? He might be dark for a Polish person or a Swede, yeah. He certainly is not dark for an African. It's absolutely ludicrous. Anyway, oh God, I don't want to go back into this. We're going to dive into a few things today, and it'll be a bit of fun. It's not going to be too heavy, and I'm going to show you some new reconstructions, and I'm also going to show you the fact that the reconstruction that I made of Amenhotep III is anthropometrically and craniometrically consistent with his statues. So then the ball's in your court to kind of decide, well, I've made a reconstruction that I think complements his statues. It overlays and fits perfectly on his skull. It complements everything we know about his anthropometrics, the anthropology and the genetics that suggest that he was a black African. It's up to you from then to decide where you think he sits. That's why I said, let's settle this, because that was the one argument actually that Cicero raised. He said, oh, it doesn't work. That was the one thing that I remember. It stuck in my mind when he put it in the comments, because he was on here, by the way. If you weren't here, Cicero, the actual reconstruction artist, was on both of my live streams. I think someone blocked him, which I'm a little bit upset about. So if you did block him and you know how to unblock him, I'd really appreciate that you unblock Cicero. I really didn't want him blocked. I know he might have been irritating some people because he was questioning a lot, but he was I was doing a live stream where he was the subject, so in that regard he was kind of a guest of honor. So I didn't want him to be blocked. So yeah, if you do have the means to, because I was looking earlier, I don't know how, if you blocked him and you've got some kind of access to unblock him, I'd appreciate that. If not, I'll have to figure it out myself. And I will be reaching out to him on Facebook to try and get him on the channel because I do want to put him to task and ask him to justify. I've got so many questions for him. He's got a very dubious backlog, and I don't think he does it deliberately. And actually, it's quite funny because any of you who are kind of like regulars on my live streams, it must sound like I'm a real soft spot when it comes to those Reconstruction artists, because I'm always making excuses for them. It was the same thing with Carolyn Wilkerson. I'm always like, oh no, but she's just following orders or this, that, and I can't bring myself to think that they're fulfilling their own agenda. And I actually feel the same way with this guy Cicero. I kind of just feel like, I guess there's a bit of willful, blinkers going on with him. He's kind of willfully kind of like closing his eyes and just kind of like getting on with it. I'd imagine it's a well-paid job. I don't know. That's a presumption I'm making. I don't know. I shouldn't be making excuses for them, but I don't know. Maybe it's a fellow creative thing. I feel a soft spot. But anyway, thank you, Mosey. These people really expect us to believe their own biased reconstructions, as opposed to the people who actually saw him face to face and represented him as a typical Nile Valley African. Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. It's like the amount of disrespect, when you think about it, let's think about it at that level. The amount and the degree of contempt and disrespect that they hold for us indigenous Africans, that they will openly in 2024 tell us that all of our artists were shit, and all of the people of the Nile Valley were blind and stupid, and all of the pharaohs were vain, ignorant, and didn't know how to preserve their likeness. They weren't interested in actually having statues made up of them that look like them. We're the only civilization, out of the great classical civilizations, whose artwork it's okay to thoroughly ignore. Excuse my French earlier as well, but it's frustrating, isn't it? It's really quite undermining. It's quite rude, and this is what we've just kind of learned to expect and accept from Egyptology, because that's how they treat us. It's unbelievable. Okay, so let's get going. Hello everyone, by the way. Got a really good crowd in. I'm actually really pleased to see a lot of familiar names in there. Got a really, really good crowd. I would read you all out, but it's going to take me a long time. But hello to everyone. I can see you all. Thanks for joining me. It's going to be a good stream. So let's start off with what we're looking at. And I think what we'll do, just to give a little bit of a table of contents in terms of our attack for today, is I do want to take you through a paper, and I think it's one that Cicero was referencing a lot, because there's one paper he's done which goes through, I did go through one on Monday, but there'll be another one that I want to go where it goes through the entire process. And I really think it's important that we understand this process that they take to get there. And the reason I want to understand it is because it's important for us when we get into discourse, because they'll raise false false truths about the work that we're doing here, and they'll say it's less than because you're not doing this, and it's less than because you're not doing that, and we're following this science and we're following that science, and we're undertaking this process and that process. But as you've seen, hopefully from the last two live streams, there's really nothing special about the process that they follow to get there. Forensic facial reconstruction, or facial approximation, as you'll hear it be called in this live stream, and in the paper that I'm going to read from you, is an art. Okay, it remains an art. It will always be an art, and it will never be a science, because it's fully subjective. It's not objective, so it can't be classified as a science. Okay, you can apply whatever you want to it, but the bottom line is there's too much bias just introduced in the process for them to come up with an objective outcome. And yeah, let's carry on. So yeah, let's carry on. Fake science, LP kickboxing said. I think, yeah, that's a good way to put it. All right, so this I'm going to pull a paper up. Okay, I think let's start there, and then I'm going to dive in, and I'm going to show you where I've got to, and yeah, and then if that works out for good time, it'll be a short stream. We'll call it a day there. So let's get started. This is what I want to pull up. Okay, so I'm not going to read the full paper, but there will be a bit of reading today. Okay, there'll be a bit of reading. It's going to be like loads and loads, but there'll be a bit of reading. So just bear with me as we kind of like work our way through. Luckily, we don't have to read the whole thing. I just want to take you to the important parts. So obviously this paper covers basically the facial approximation or the forensic facial reconstruction process. And I'm going to take you through the important parts, and I'm also going to give you some feedback, because some of this stuff actually, some of you, I don't know if everyone will, but some of you will recall this part because, and this is something I'm going to actually touch on today. I touched on this particular, what you're seeing on the screen right now, this particular set of images in a live stream I did a few months back, talking about the fact that the shape of King Tut's skull is changing. And the thing that I think I've come to, or at least the conclusion at least that I think I've come to now, is that actually this scan that was done by Cicero Moraes and co is actually just a bad scan. So in all this talk about how scientific and how accurate they are, I'm actually going to prove in this live stream as well that they've changed the shape of his skull when they created these new scans, which is something that was very bizarre and unexpected, but that they did. So yeah, you're gonna see the problems anyway. So let's go through this together, and let's give a little bit of time to this. Thank you, Macy, for the $2 donation. Says they're following science fiction. LOL. And yeah, it certainly is. It's science, whatever the heck you want it to be, really. So let's see. Okay, and I'm hopefully, we've been over this subject a few times, but I think now it's going to be kind of like becoming water for ducks back for you guys, because we just know how this whole process works now. We've covered it so many times on this channel. So if you're new here, sit back, enjoy. Hopefully you'll learn something new about facial approximation or forensic facial reconstruction, and you'll understand why we don't give it that much credit. And there's a reason why. But yeah, let's get started. The facial approximations of Tutankhamun. Because he is a historical figure of great notoriety, Tutankhamun's facial appearance has always been a matter of general interest. Even more so because of his familial relation to Akhenaten, known for breaking the old religious and artistic tenets of ancient Egypt, which causes fascination and perplexities on the part of scholars and the general public, raising hypotheses ranging from aforementioned syndromes and conditions linked to endogamy and sensationalist unscientific extrapolations. Endogamy, they love that word, don't they? This is one of the things that you'll hear there. Modern Egyptians say, "Oh, we are endogamous. we've never been invaded, and we haven't changed. We're exactly the same people for the past 2,000 years, and we only sleep with our own." It's like, yeah, that's not true. There's no anthropology to support that. That's purely a myth. Okay, Henry, thank you very much for your €2 donation. Our ancestors is basically on display as wall trophies. I know, it's very sad. It's very sad. It's always bittersweet when I do these things, because I inevitably have to use essentially the cadavers of ancient Africans, which is very heartbreaking. But it's almost like we're put in this situation where we have to do it, because if we ignore it, then the history of Africa's history just gets walked over and claimed by people who has nothing to do with. Precisely because of this popularity, I'm going to carry on reading, the pharaoh's face has been a target of a series of facial approximations using forensic techniques over the last few decades. Forensic techniques, that's just French for guesswork. In 1983, forensic artist Betty Pat Gatliff reconstructed Tutankhamun's face for my plaster skull. I should have pulled up the Gatliff reconstruction. That would have been interesting to look at. I wonder if I could pull it up very quickly. If I can't, I'm not going to dive into anything like deep here. If I can't find it immediately, I'll give up. Okay, I'm just thinking it would be quite interesting to have it. Oh, if I could spell Gat. Oh goodness, I can't spell. Once again, Gatliff Tutankhamun reconstruction. By the way, you'll notice that I only use Tutankhamun when I'm searching for stuff, but I actually always call him Tutankhamen. I prefer Amen because it has a East African enunciation to it. Amen and Amin tends to be the African pronunciation, as opposed to Amun, which tends to be the Semitic or the Arabic pronunciation. That's why I always call him Tutankhamen and not Amun. Just letting you know. No, it doesn't look like I can find it. I just wanted to see if I could pull up her one, because it has been referenced a few times. Oh, this must be it here. There it is. Oh, we found it. We found it. There. You know what? I love having these. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, because all of these people keep claiming that their process is so... Wait a second, just a quick question, yeah? Just a quick question before I burst out in laughter. Any guesses where she got that nose from? 3 guesses for my audience. Just looking at this photo, where do you think she got that nose from? I mean, it's objective, clearly. You know, this is forensic facial reconstruction. And I love this interpretation of the Nemes, but I'm not gonna even laugh at that, because this is all done manually. This is before CGI, so I'm not gonna diss her. This was a good thingy. But I haven't got it in the comments yet. Does anyone know where they think what she used as a reference for the nose of this Tutankhamun? Anybody? Yeah, Crenshaw got it straight away, man. Definitely, she used her own nose, and this is a trait and a trend that you will see. Okay, they use their own features. Let's look at the other one. Let's look at Elizabeth Dane's Tutankhamun reconstruction. Yeah, and we'll keep the trend going of these guys referencing their own face. Oh man, that was great. That was fantastic. That's the first time I've seen that one. I really should have done the diligence there. So let's have a look at Elizabeth Dane's reconstruction, or Dane's. Okay, so this is the one we've seen. This one, the androgynous Tutankhamun. And let's just, for shits and giggles, pull up a picture of Elizabeth Dane's. There she is. So there's Elizabeth Dane's, yeah. I mean, and let's look at her reconstruction. I mean, it's not far, is it? It's not far, is it? It's in the same realm. I mean, it's not as obvious as old Gatliff there, but you know, you gotta love these people, don't you? You know, they're using their objective reasoning when it comes to making these reconstructions, and somehow they just end up reconstructing their own faces and putting them, slapping them on the skull. Oh, well, it's just the way he came out. Oh man, Absolutely, absolutely hilarious. Sorry, I wasn't expecting that. It's good. It's good for comic humor, comic relief. We need a bit of comic relief when we're doing this subject. It's important. Roy Smith, thank you for the $10, my brother. I appreciate it. He said wrecked. On there. This is consistent. They're always wrecking themselves. This is anyway. Let's move on. That was a nice little segue into some unexpected comedy. Let's carry on. So. Did I get to the bottom of that? Oh well, man, lost my trail of thought now. Yeah, so did I get to the bottom of that there? Tutankhamun's from a plaster skull. There we go. Molded from radiographs taken from the skull of by physical anthropologist Joe Young. The face was revealed during a meeting of the Miami Society of Egyptology and published in Life magazine in June of that year. In 2005, then the Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities of Egypt, Dr. Zahi Hawass, presented to the world the result of work coordinated with 3 teams that individually developed 3 facial reconstructions of Tutankhamun based on the segmented skull from the computed tomography that had been carried out the same year. The Egyptian group was led by biomedical engineer Khalid El Said, who performed the reconstruction digitally with the aid of 3D editor and was aware of the pharaoh's identity. The French team, on the contrary, was led by forensic specialist Jean-Noël Vignal, and the face was modelled analogously, that's a word, and anthropological by anthropological sculptor Elizabeth Darnes. So that's the one we all just had a good laugh at. Both knew that it was the young pharaoh, while the American team, made up of physical anthropologist Susan Anton and forensic sculptor Michael Anderson, carried out work completely blindly without knowing who it was generating, like the French team. I just want to really quickly see if I can find Michael Anderson's one. Let's see if we get a trifecta. I'm not sure if I've seen this one before. Maybe I have. I just didn't know what it was called. Michael Anderson. This is probably the bucktooth one, actually. Tutankhamun Reconstruction. Let's see if I can find this one. So it's not that one. Oh, it must be this one. Yeah, so I've seen this. Yeah, that's the one, 'cause I've seen it on the documentary. So his is the one that ended up looking like a simian. It's this one here, which ended up having this really kind of like ape-like look and this weird I think there's this one they did, and then they just tried to bury it because it was a bit of an embarrassment. I wonder if Michael Anderson looks like this guy. But that was his one. So there. Thank you very much, Macy. She said, they claim in history they weren't present to create. They didn't emerge until about 2000 BC. Kemet and Sumeria were already built. I mean, there's not much more to say other than that. That's absolutely true. We know in terms of antiquity, the African civilizations predate all of the ones, that modern Europeans hail from by several thousand years. So yeah, that goes without saying. Well, I'd say more than everyone, but let's, because we're talking about Reconstruction artists, keep it focused. Glad you're tackling this particular Amenhotep III issue. As soon as I saw it, I prayed you'd chop it to bits. Thank you, Sackham Sacks. This is kind of the third, really the second, but kind of the third video I'm doing now, live stream. So I think we have thoroughly cooked it. I'm not going to be absolutely satisfied though until I get Cicero Moraes, the Reconstruction artist. I want to get him on the channel. I think that will be really good. It'll be quite important for us to have that discussion. So I think that will be my kind of magnum opus when it comes to these reconstructions. But anyway, there's the Michael Anderson. So we've got a bit of a collection now. There's Michael Anderson, there's Elizabeth Danes and her reconstruction, and then we've got Gatliff over here. Sorry, I got stuff. Oh man, that one's the best. That was sensational. I love it. Sorry. Oh, and thank you, Bishop, for the $2 donation. He said, thanks for your efforts. Keep up the fight. Absolutely will. Let's carry on. This is taking longer than it should do. So we've looked at Michael Anderson's one, blah, 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 blah. Even though there were slight variations between the faces, I mean, I'd say there was more than slight variation between the faces. One looked like, well, anyway, let's carry on. This is the thing. King Tutankhamun's skull is so, or was so, extreme. At least there, they haven't tried to hide it and create this fake look. They've kind of shown it for its true form. Sorry, I keep jumping around here. His skull is so extreme. Once you kind of apply any features to it, you could say, well, they looked really similar, because everyone's attention is going to be drawn to the skull and the positioning of the ear, which is always going to be the same. That's kind of been dictated to you. So, that should be the case. I think the only good thing about this one is that at least it's preserved the subnasal prognathism. So they haven't tilted the skull inside the reconstruction like the Elizabeth Danes one did, who tilted it. We've already discussed this, who tilted it. Can you see? So the back of the head's poking up. They've tilted it in order to try and reduce the subnasal prognathism, and ended up in this really, they're just so ugly. I can't look at them. But yeah, you get the idea. Let's carry on. In my opinion, the shape of the face and the skull are remarkably similar to a famous image of Tutankhamun as a child, where he is shown as a sun god at dawn rising from the lotus blossom. So he's talking about the head of Nefertem there. So he would go for that because they've deliberately lightened that statue. But feature-wise, I don't know how he's getting that. Let's just quickly have a comparison. Yeah, it doesn't look anything like the head of Nefertem. This is definitely what he's talking about, because this is the only portrait I can think of where Tutankhamun's head is rising out of a blossom. The only thing I can think that he's referring to is that King Tutankhamun has this very peculiar head shape in this statue, but you can see feature-wise it's completely different. But also this head shape, if you've seen my documentary on crowns, you know that I'm not convinced that this was actually supposed to be a depiction of his actual head, because his head doesn't go that long and certainly doesn't rise up towards the back when it's oriented correctly, when it's facing forward. So I actually believe that this was an expression of Amasunzu. He was shown actual hair shaping here, and this would have been much darker. This would have been a representation of the hair. That's my personal belief. It's only a belief. I can't support it, just like any other theory that anyone will posit, but that's what I kind of lean towards based on trends that I've seen in the Armana family. I believe they used that quite a lot, and I think a lot of what they kind of present as being alien heads was actually a presentation of Amasunzu. I think for those of you who've seen the documentary, you know this already, but I'll give an example of how that works. Just so you've got an idea of what I'm referring to. So this is a representation. This is the last queen of Rwanda, Rosalie Gisanda, and you can see her exercising this. And by the way, the Rwandan royal family, before they were finally overthrown, were the last to practice hair shaping in the form of the Capresh, and in the form of several crown styles that you'll find in ancient Kemet. So it's not like this was in isolation. This wasn't done in isolation, this hairstyling. This was something that was reserved for royals and people of nobility. They practiced ethnotrichology the same way the ancient Egyptians did. So this is what leaned me towards believing that this actually what you see on the head of Nefertem, and not the shaping of his skull. But that's just like I said, that's my personal opinion based on research I've done in the region. And watch my documentary on crowns if you haven't seen it. Rod, thank you for the donation. Says the pyramids were not tombs but temples. after the initiation rites have been performed, the individual came forth by day. I certainly believe there weren't tombs, and I'm down to hear more about them being temples. They had tombs. We know that. We have the Valley of the Kings, the Valley of the Queens. We have tombs. We know what tombs are. And yeah, the pyramids certainly were not created to be tombs. There were pyramids that were tombs, I believe, in the Sudan region, but those were different kinds of pyramids. Those weren't like the Great Pyramid structures. So yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, and your very generous donation is very much appreciated. Let me carry on. Furthermore, Pausch and colleagues created a bidimensional facial approximation of the profile of King Tutankhamun performed from X-ray images with the aid of Morphman for software. Finally, in year 2022, Andrew Nelson, that's another one that I've covered. So I covered this reconstruction. That was actually one of my first ones, my first teen. I don't know if any of you remember, but you have to go way back for that video. Segmented and printed the skull of Tutankhamun based on computer tomographic scans, passing it onto the sculptor Christian Courbet so that they could proceed with the analog facial reconstruction. The work was presented in December of that year and served as the basis for a documentary made by North American broadcaster PBS. So if you've been, in fact, just shout me out in the channel if you've seen this video that I did, because this is going way back now to like early last year. Just give me a little shout in the comments and tell me if you remember my Andrew Nelson reconstruction Chris Courbet one. Let me know. It'll be interesting to see who's kind of been tuned in for that long. Materials and method. In fact, before I read that out, £5. Thank you, Sankum. Another drop in the bucket to support. How does one schedule an in-person meeting? I have so many questions to ask someone with knowledge like you. Join the Discord and just at me, and we can chat. And if you need to meet, you gave me £5, so I'm assuming you're in the UK. Yeah, that can run a bot. Yeah. In the meantime, just join the Discord. That'll be the easiest way. I think that Wesker's already dropped the link if you scroll up. Yeah, thank you for the £5, by the way. I appreciate it. Biological anthropology is the branch of science that aims to study humankind and its biological characteristics, primarily performed on real anatomical specimens. In recent decades, it has been possible to act on volumetric digital records or images. Current technology allows producing three-dimensional materials from photographs and bidimensional images of CT scans, which significantly increases the possibilities of analysis. Unfortunately, it also increases the possibility of errors, which we're going to kind of touch on today as well. Therefore, none of the conclusions of this article are final and are intended to only present the techniques used. So, I mean, just before I go forward, I'll remember to carry on from there. But just bear in mind, every time they do these reconstructions, they swear, yeah, we're using the science, our approximation techniques are amazing, this, that, and the other, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing this, we're doing that. Gatliff reconstruction. Darnez reconstruction. And, well, no, that's not it here. Sorry, let's get it right. Anderson reconstruction. And I didn't even pull up the Chris Courbet reconstruction, but that's completely different as well. I don't want to open them all up, but you can see the point I'm making is every reconstruction they make looks vastly different to the last one. And obviously the one that we're going to be referring to today is this one over here, which is the Moraes. We'll call it the Moraes reconstruction. All vastly different. And yet they all swear that they're using cutting edge technology and they're the science, and this is the one that's going to give us the correct facial approximation. And it's not science, okay? The most scientific thing you could do would be to pull up a statue of Tutankhamun, or pull up several of his statues, aggregate the features that are common, and recreate what you see. That would be the common sense thing to do with someone who's vastly portrayed. Thank you, Afri. Hello, I'm new here. I would like to know, what is your background and credentials? Love your channel so far. My background and credentials is that I'm actually quite similar to Cicero in that I don't have any specific background in anthropology. I'm a very keen independent researcher. I'm got a very large library, and I've got a massive background in terms of photography, facial, what do you want to call it, doctoring, graphic design, all of that stuff. So I've got a lot of skill in that area. So I would say I'm a skilled independent researcher, and that's as far as my credentials in the area goes. But it doesn't really take credentials to read. That's the thing. We're reading this paper together. Doesn't take credentials to read. It just takes the application of, common sense, and also, a bit of dedication. If this is something that you do and you're passionate about, people will tend to call the people who are most passionate about it. And that's what happened, exactly what happened with Cicero, who's now done reconstructions across the world he's just a graphic designer, but he's done reconstructions for several anthropologists. So it's really about how much, I guess, passion and accuracy you can bring. So yeah, that's it. But appreciate the donation. Let's carry on. None of the conclusions of this article, okay, so I got up to here, as well as to foster new questions about this person of unique historical importance. By the way, I have other qualifications, obviously, but I don't like just reading out my qualifications when they're not relevant, obviously. So we'll leave that as an aside. For this, the analysis by digital deformation of a skull with characteristics similar to those recorded by the pharaoh are proposed. A facial approximation using forensic techniques was also performed, an analysis of the peculiar characteristics of the shape of the skull. And we already talked about the alleged peculiar characteristics of the shape of the skull. And we've already ascertained that what they classify as peculiar characteristics of the shape of the skull are entirely regional expressions. They're talking about things like the dolichocephaly exhibited by the skull. They're probably talking about things in relation to the dental region of the skull, the maxillary prognathism of the skull, which we spoke about, the diastema, the overjet, the overbite, all of these things that we already identified on Monday's stream, which I'm not going to go over again. But the point is that we looked at several papers and we ascertained that all of these things were just regional traits, incredibly normal regional expressions that actually in groups like the Kikuyu had them at a rate of like 99%. So we're talking about almost every Kikuyu person exhibited these traits, which they classify here as being peculiar characteristics. So it's all about knowing what you're looking at, as well as an approach regarding the brain capacity estimated by the volume of the skull were made. Facial approximation is an auxiliary facial recognition technique that uses the skull as a basis to approximate the face of the individual in life. The history of this technique has always been shrouded in controversy, mainly due to the difficulty in defining what is scientific in brackets objective and what is art subjective, and this is entirely art in its approach. The present work avoids the use of the term reconstruction, replacing it with another one more consistent with its reality, that is forensic facial approximation. I mean, to me personally, it'd probably be better if you just said reconstruction. Calling it forensic facial approximation or facial approximation actually makes it sound like it's a science. That sounds like that to me sounds like you're really pushing the fact that you've got, forensic facial approximation. Okay, you've used the word approximation, but it still sounds like, it's forensic, I mean, come on. we'll go over it now anyway. Yeah, let's carry on. It is not just a question of adapting the name, but using complementary approaches based on the analysis of data extracted from living individuals, as will be explained later, in order to obtain a face supported by the maximum objective references. They use that word objective a lot, okay, and we already discussed how objective this process is, but we'll carry on today, leaving little room for subjective interventions. Okay, I promise not to swear. This is my own live stream. By the researchers. Okay. Wildflower, thank you very much for your £5 donation. Appreciate the work you put into content. Plus, you have a great eye for detail. Enjoy learning from you. Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. Almost missed one there. Mr. Panamera, have a question. Have you ever heard of Memnon, the Ethiopian king? The British have listed him as Ramesses II. His bust is titled Younger Memnon. I think I know which one you're talking about. That's Roman era, isn't it? I think I know which one you're referring to. Yes, so I have heard of them. I think Memnon was an ancient, comes from the Iliad, I think. So it comes from Homer's. Yeah, it's a character in the Iliad, and I think this person was named after him, but I don't think it was actually Memnon, because this is obviously several hundred years after. I could be incorrect. Anyway, well, we could touch on that. Thank you very much, by the way, for your £5 donation, and thank you, Sankum, for your £5 donation as well. You haven't left any comment, but but I appreciate you very much. Yeah, so I got to the end of that that there without, and I behaved myself. Let's carry on. 3D reconstruction of the skull. As mentioned above, the facial approximation, FA called here, technique requires a skull to be made. Thus the researchers sought spatial references so that it could be reconstructed in 3D. The team that composed this work has a broad and long experience in the structural reconstruction of scenarios from a single photo, and skulls from several photos or orthographic images. Two works carried out by the authors of this publication use skulls modeled from the intersection of two-dimensional photos. Okay, so that's kind of similar to what I do. I at the moment, I'm at the place where I'm using two-dimensional photos and from two different angles, and basically working reconstructions using that. I hope to start doing 3D ones soon, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of free 3D software out there. Obviously there's going to be a learning curve, but I can see myself doing that quite soon. Such is the case of the pseudo Sophocles in 2020 and Saint Vincent de Paul in 2022. Seeking a more robust and reliable base to provide skull structural data, the researcher searched for articles that offered capture data from tomographic slices and skull x-rays, complemented with some anthropometric measurements. Thus, a vast collection of x-ray captures was studied in the work of Boyer and al. 2003, where proportions could be raised from semi-orthographic images but without available scale parameters. So essentially all they're talking about here is basically, utilizing a library of different images in order to create a 3D image. So it's kind of like getting a side view from here, a profile view, a top view from here, a front view, a back view, and putting them all together and trying to aggregate a 3D image of what the skull looks like. So it's kind of like being able to do the scan without doing the scan. The visual observations and measurements were adjusted by the publication of Hawass and Salim 2016, which reported that the general dimensions of the skull in the X and Y axes. The study by Habicht and al., that's the same characters who did the other reconstruction, reinforced the available measurements, complementing with others, providing a general adjustment for the three axes X, Y, and Z. Two other materials, even though they are not peer-reviewed publications, were shared by the creators who had access to tomography performed by Tutankhamun Tutankhamun's skull and offer potential 2 and 3 dimensional references for the skull. Now, this is where I kind of have a little bit of an aversion. Okay, guys? So bear with me here, because I did a live stream about this before, so I'm not going to dive into a huge amount of detail. But I've got a huge problem with the actual skull of Tutankhamun, which you can see pictured here. And instantly, you can just look at this, and instantly, if you're like me, I look at this and I'm just like, that's a Nilotic boy. All I can see is Kenyan, Somali. It just, even though it's a mummy and it's shriveled up and you can barely see it, you can just see everything about this is just Nilotic African. Everything about it. You know, it's just so typical, such a typical scene in terms of its shape. Now, take a mental note. Have a look at the shape of this skull, okay? I want you to have a look at how it's kind of like, it's kind of triangular. So it narrows towards the top. It's very long, obviously, incredibly dolichocephalic. Take a mental note. Now have a look at the scan that they reproduced, okay? I'm just going to scroll down a few and just look at the difference in that skull. Does that look like the same skull shape to you? Because to me, it doesn't look the same at all. It should be rising up here. This entire chunk shouldn't be here. It should be longer. It's clearly shorter. And I saw that instantly and I was like, that doesn't look accurate. You're claiming to make a reconstruction of Tut, but you're mildly, either accidentally or deliberately, changing the shape of his skull. Now that might sound like I'm being crazy here, but let me just provide you with the receipts so you know that I'm not being crazy here. I'm going to have to dig into an old photo really quickly, because I did this as a live stream before. But I want you to see how, I'm not going to call it nefarious because it could have just been an error, but how problematic I would say this is. So let me just share an image with you so you can see what I'm sharing. Here it is. So this is what I shared on my live stream, I should say. Bear with me. Where's it gone? There it is. Okay, so this is it here. So I'm going to zoom in and I want you to see the differences. So on top, okay, on top, this kind of pinkish color is the is the old or the original skull, and you can see the difference in length. Look at the difference in depth there. So I've highlighted certain images, things there. Even this thing protruding out of the neck, that's just a pure fabrication, okay? That wasn't there before, okay? You can see the head used to be much shallower over there, okay? You can see there's a difference in the height there. It doesn't line up at all. And I'm going to just quickly show you another image just to show you how different it is, okay? So let me just quickly share. If I could just scroll through. Okay. So I did this. This is when we were looking at the cephalic index. So this one here. So have a look at this one here. So this is in the blue, I believe, was I'm trying to say which one was the original. I can't remember. There. So there, sorry. So underneath, can you see underneath there? That's the original scans that you got of Tut, okay? And can you see that little orange part peeking out the back? That was the original length. This is, bear in mind, they're lined up perfectly at the front and they are scaled to one another, okay? So you have a skull that's much longer, but you also have a skull that is much shallower. And that's what I was trying to show you in this image here. So the skull used to poke out much further, but also used to end much sooner. But it's got all of this extra depth and it's got all of these kind of extra parts to it. Now, the reason this is happening is because they're creating a scan from the skull, but clearly there's fabrication that's going on. They're not trying to one it here. And one of the reasons why I believe this may be happening, I'm not going to throw out too many accusations because it could just be an accident, it could just be incorrect scanning, but one of the reasons I believe this kind of serves to benefit is they can kind of introduce, which Zahi Hawass has been trying to do for such a long time, try and introduce this idea that Tut is in fact brachycephalic when he's clearly dolichocephalic. Like, he's trying to change his skull shape to fall more in line with his own skull shape, which is just a bizarre thing to do. But if you look at the reconstruction, it hasn't got that same long-headedness that we see with all of even the other Tut reconstructions, where they had to acknowledge this guy's head is really long. All of a sudden now it's got this kind of roundness to it, this roundness which is kind of this kind of mesocephalic, and it's kind of borderline in kind of heading towards the brachycephalic skull, as you can see over here with this fat head. I'm not even sure what this D, E, and F is, but look at the look at this. I'm going to explain how that works, by the way, why I've got this fat head and they're kind of molding it over. I'm going to explain how that works in a moment, if you're still with me. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you, that the changing shape of King Tut's skull, which I had a live stream on before. I now know why it's happened. It's because they've been doing these scans and then taking a scan of a scan and a scan of a scan and a scan of a scan, and by the end of it they're moving very far away from what was the original shape of Tut's skull, which everyone agrees was dolichocephalic. It's very bizarre. So let me pause there really quickly. Sankum, £22 for the day. Thank you so much, bro. I really, really, really appreciate that, man. Thank you. And I'm glad you're keeping a tally as well, because I'm infamously bad at that, but it doesn't mean I don't appreciate it. I actually really, really do appreciate every penny that you guys give. Okay, so let me carry on. So I think we were down here. So he talks about reference in the video, blah, 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 blah. Knowing that according to Taylor, the diameter of such a structure is 25 millimeters, it would be enough to convert the pixels into millimeters, and an important measure on the x-axis can be found, blah, blah. So it's talking about making the measurements here. I kind of want to... The important measure in this case is the distance between the frontomolar orbital points, FMO, yeah, definitely, it's fine. I'm just going to call it FMO from now on if it comes up again. Another even more precise reference is present in an article on the phys.org website about the same approximation performed by Corbett and Nelson, where there is a screenshot with the visualization of the pharaoh's skull in axial, sagittal, and coronal planes, accompanied by the measurements in millimeters of the frames. Thus, a conversion from pixel to millimeters would be enough to know when the measurement of such structures. So they're just talking about there. That's in basic terms. I'm sure most of you got that anyway. Just talking about the fact that if it's a certain size on the screen, then we can infer that it's a certain size in real life by measuring the pixels, converting pixels to millimeters. It's not rocket science. Very, very simple thing that they're explaining there, and they're just talking about the fact that they'll do this from different views. So once again, we're still in that same world where we was talking about gathering images, lots of different scans, as many different images as possible, kind of, and converging them together into a single authority 3D image that they've created. So that's all it is. The presence of the aforementioned materials, formally published or not, demonstrates the abundance of data available on Tutankhamun. It's possible to join the fragmented data in order to reconstruct three-dimensional with a good degree of compatibility with real anatomical structures, what would be the skull of the young pharaoh. With all the data of proportions and measurements available, a skull resulting from the CT scan of a virtual donor. Now, this is important, guys. Okay, I know I've been rambling on for a little bit now, but this is where I really need you to pay attention, because this is a huge insight into how this process works. So if there's anything that you take from today, take this, because this will be important to, even if you might even get into a conversation with Cicero himself. Understand this, and you'll understand essentially how his process works and how it's slightly different from Carolyn Wilkinson's process. It's very slight, but have a look. It says here, with all the data, proportions and measurements available, a skull resulting from the CT scan of a virtual donor. So this virtual donor is what's important. Underwent a process known as anatomical deformation to be explained below, so that the segmented bone structure adapted to the configurations of the skull of Tutankhamun generated the model that would be used in the facial approximation. Now, virtual donor, okay, that's been mentioned here. That's what you're seeing take place over here. So what they do is they get their skull, and once they've got their skull, they slop a virtual donor onto the skull. Okay, so the idea is that the virtual donor goes on there. The virtual donor has their own skull shape. So what you do is you mold and you bend and you twist the virtual donor's skull until it's the same shape as your target skull. Okay, and by the end of it, the virtual donor's facial proportions should meld and change. Okay, they should meld and change into the new reconstruction that you're doing. So that's why it's kind of like they've got this big fat head that they've slopped on top of the skull, and then they've molded their virtual donor's head around it to get where they get what they get in the end. Now, this process wasn't used for all of it. There was some kind of like, there was a few I'm going to say surprises in terms of their process as well. So let's carry on reading. But now you know how the virtual donor thing works. All right, that's how it works. It's kind of like you've got one face. It's in essence, it's kind of very similar to taking tissue data. You're still starting off with your virtual donor has to come from somewhere. You can't have a generic human virtual donor. There has to be a population it's based on. And so this is where the whole idea of objectivity goes out of the window. It's impossible to be objective because you're being given an ethnicity to start off with. So your virtual donor will be an Egyptian virtual donor, or it will be a Spanish virtual donor, or it will be a this virtual donor, or it will be a that virtual donor. But your virtual donor has to come from somewhere. So this is just the same essentially as having average tissue data, which is the Manchester method, which we spoke about on Monday. It's the same difference. It's just kind of like a more digital way of doing it, so to speak. So that's how that works. Forensic facial reconstruction, or forensic facial approximation, or simply FA, is an auxiliary recognition technique which reconstructs, approximates the face of an individual from his skull, and is used when there is little information for the identity of the subject. So why are we using it? Why are we using it here? You use it when you have nothing. Yeah, use forensic facial approximation when you have nowhere to go. Okay, you've got no reference material, you've got nothing. You know that it doesn't really work. So, but in cases where something is better than nothing, you pull out forensic facial reconstruction, and maybe you'll get lucky and maybe you'll trigger something and someone will be found or someone will be identified. But by and large, you know that this is just a massive pool of guesswork. You've even said there, if little information is known about the identity of the subject. We have too much information when it comes to King Tut. We have the most detailed 3D gold statue ever created in history in King Tut's golden mask. Literally, like, what more would you need? What more would you need? You don't need any more than that. So you can see here, even in the midst of their own papers when they're writing, they are literally contradicting themselves, because they're saying, yeah, we do it when we don't have any idea about the identity of the subject. You know King Tut is, you know what he looked like, you know his mum/grandma Queen T looked like, you know what all these people look like. So why are you using forensic facial reconstruction? Why aren't you just reconstructing the statues and then making them match to the body, which is exactly what we're doing here? It's bizarre. Kang, can you, thank you very much for your $30 donation. Very, very generous. Thank you. Can you discuss how the top of King Tut and Akhenaten's skull shows dolichocephaly? Can you post images of it? It's in community page. Thanks. it's a very simple calculation. In fact, I'll do that for you now. It's a very simple calculation. So I'll show you now, just so you know and you're aware. Oh, sorry, 1 second. King Tutankhamun's skull, and these are original scans, okay? So not the ones that have come since. Very, very simple calculation. Skull width from widest point to widest point, okay? And obviously these are scaled to one another, okay? So these are scaled to match one another. Skull's length from shortest point, well, from longest point to longest point, okay? So based on these two images, and I've done this several times by the way, we have a cephalic index of between 0.72 and 0.73, which is dolichocephalic. I'll do another view for you as well, so you're aware. These ones are actually of the same scan, okay? So we know we've got consistency there as well, not two separate images, okay? Skull width, skull length, scaled to one another, okay? From chin to top of head, 0.74, strongly dolichocephalic, okay? So you can run that. There's many available scans, okay? If you can be bothered to run the calculation, it's quite easy to make. But yeah, he's definitely dolichocephalic. So that's there. He's very far from brachycephalic. And he's the most famous long head known, so I don't even know why that would come up for discussion. But thank you very much. I really appreciate your donation, Kang. And Stephen said, this is so important. Thank you for your courage, diligence, and intelligence. Keep them honest. God bless my dear brother. Appreciate it. Kang, I really appreciate those donations, but I'm not gonna go into EPU's community page because I don't want to. I might do it later, so please don't donate any more requesting me to do that. I'm definitely not gonna do it during my live stream, I'm afraid. But I might check that out later and I'll get back to you privately. If you can actually join the Discord, okay, and we'll carry on this discussion and I'll send you everything that you need to know. But I don't want to give that guy any advertisement on my page because I don't like him. So yeah, there you go. Stephen, once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Let's carry on anyway. So that's all in topic, to be honest with you. So thanks for making that request, Kang, and make sure you get at me on the Discord and we can discuss what you need from me. I'll be very, very happy to discuss that with anyone. Let's carry on. It should be noted that the technique is not about identification such as those offered by DNA, yep, we know that, or comparative analysis of dental arches, but about recognition that can lead to subsequent identification. So once again, it's talking about when you don't know who someone is, hopefully you got something that will help you get there. The present work uses the same step-by-step approach discussed by Abdullah, starting with the complementation of the missing regions of the skull, followed by the projection of the profile and structures of the face from statistical data, generating the volume of the face with the aid of the anatomical deformation technique, and finishing with the details of the face, configuration of the hair, and generation of the final images. And here just goes on about what software and stuff is used, which we don't need to read. I'm going to kind of move on from there. Results and discussion. Okay, so now it gets on to, let's get on to results and discussion. The results suggest maxillary prognathism and mandibular retrognathism, corroborating the findings of Pausch in 2015. So maxillary prognathism, that's basically that angling that leads to overjet. So let me just quickly pull that up so we know what we're talking about there. Okay, this is a bit low res. Sorry, 1 second, let me find a better picture. Bear with me. Actually, it should be here for us to see if they scan correctly. Okay, cool. It is. So maxillary prognathism is the angling forward that causes overjet. We spoke about that in the last. That's a very African trait, by the way. So maxillary prognathism, when rather than your these teeth kind of like forming straight downwards, they kind of fall at a forward angle. So that's your maxillary prognathism. And then mandibular, so this is your mandible, this bone, jawbone over here. Retrognathism is when it recedes, okay? So it goes behind the top jaw. So, but it doesn't actually recede that far back where it should be classified as retrognathism. But I don't know if that's the way, once again, they've done, in doing these scans, it allows them to kind of move these bones around as well, which is one of my kind of big issues. We spoke about it yesterday with the Amenhotep III. The Akhenaten, the KV55, when we were looking at his skull, they had clearly moved the lower jaw back and given him this really weird kind of gormless look, because they were desperate to hide the fact that he's clearly quite heavily prognathic. So they pushed the lower jaw back, and I feel like they've done that a little bit here, and they are at liberty to do that now because they've got a 3D structure and they can move these bones around at will. So that's kind of like one of the issues that I have there. Where was I? Here. Initially, the skull was aligned to the Frankfurt horizontal plane and received a series of projections from the middle limits of the regions belonging to the bones. Blah. Okay, I'm not going to read all of this because this is kind of like lots of kind of like technical stuff regarding the positioning. Trying to think of any of it. Yeah, I'm gonna miss all of that. I'm just gonna go from here. The projections covering the orbit downwards show a lower region within the expected proportions, with the dimensions on the x-axis between the gonian slightly larger than the average proportion, but still within normal limits. Okay, so we're talking about here the basically that kind of zygomatic region, and they're talking about the fact that he's got kind of projecting on around that region below the orbital. So that's kind of that zygomatic, that's that cheekbone that we talk about there. Once again, larger than normal. The question mark once again is, what is normal? Okay, so that's the question mark again, is what are they classifying as normal? Because if you've watched my short on the reconstruction of Nefertiti that they did based on the KV35 younger lady mummy, you see the same thing where she has these humongous zygomatic region, really big pronounced cheekbones that look really weird and abnormal on a Eurasian phenotype. On an African phenotype, totally normal. Large, round, convex zygomatic region is a very regional trait. Once again, you see it immensely in the Sahelian region, okay, and definitely along the Nile once again, with people with very large and prominent cheekbones. It's an African thing. So they keep trying to say these things are weird, but they're not. Okay. Where was I? The positions of the average proportion of the NS point, so the NS is the nasospinal, coincided with that of the skull, the incisors as well, although in general they projected slightly downwards, which may indicate that the teeth are slightly larger than average and projection. So we spoke about the teeth already, okay? We spoke about the teeth in some good detail, okay? The large projecting overjet, overbite, diastema teeth, okay? Very normal, okay? We don't need to go over that in much detail again. Okay, we looked at the paper, which we saw the rates that you see amongst the Maasai and the Kikuyu are basically through the roof. Really, really normal African teeth he has there. The mental region was positioned a little above the markers, indicating that the mandible may be smaller than the expected average proportional structure. So talking about the jaw being slightly smaller. Okay, such characteristics corroborate with the results of the USP cephalometry. Okay, a series of 36 soft tissue thickness markers based on measurements performed with ultrasound on 204 adult Egyptians. Okay, adult Egyptians. So just bear that in mind. Okay, those are modern Egyptians. Were distributed on the frontal proportion of the face. So we're now getting an idea, okay, in terms of their soft tissue thickness markers, where their donor or how their donor was created. Ultrasound in 204 adult Egyptians. So there's your, yeah, are we getting this now, guys? Yeah, just making sure that's not being missed on anyone. All right, modern Egyptian population is being used here, and which ones, once again, what's the bet that they, you know, do you think, how many Beja do you think are there in this sample? How many Nubians do you think are in this sample? You know, who are they using for this sample? Kang, another donation, thank you, $2. Did you block him? Short answer, yes, a long time ago. Thanks. I'll move on. So a series of blah 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 were distributed from the frontal proportion of the face in order to trim the limits of the skin in such regions for the tracing of the nose. So we've got there what was being used for the soft tissue. Now let's talk about the nose. For the tracing of the nose, read this part. Now this is, now I want you to just stay with me for this. For the tracing of the nose, statistical data from 110 adult individuals of various ancestries were used. Why? Can someone tell me why that's the case? Have a look here. And this is the thing, when I say, when I said to you guys that I really feel like they're watching us, and it must sound really arrogant, but then obviously I showed you guys in the video how many views, you know, our reconstruction of Tutankhamun was getting, like in the millions. I think we calculated it was like 5 million across platforms views of my Tutankhamun reconstruction. So why would they be satisfied with the fact that, okay, we're using 204 Egyptian adults for everything, but just for the nose, we're going to use 110 adult individuals of various ancestries? Why didn't you use various ancestries for everything? Why just the nose? You know? Someone tell me, why just the nose? Why would you do that? I think, personally, they knew the nose was a key feature that they wanted to represent. They wanted the nose to look more like the statue. They are feeling the pressure, and they feel the need to try and make their reconstruction look more like King Tutankhamun's statues and artwork, because they know now, because of the work we're doing, that the artwork is getting attention. The artwork is taking precedence. People are taking notice and saying, hey, why aren't you using the artwork? So they thought, okay, we have to come up with another reconstruction. Okay, this one has to be new, but it has to resemble the artwork somewhat. Otherwise, we're going to totally lose all credibility here. So how do we do that? Okay, let's just try taking an average. Okay, we've taken our average of 204 modern Egyptians, sorry. It still looks nothing like the artwork. Okay, the nose is a bit, you know, a bit African. Maybe we could bring the Africans in just for the shape of the nose and then do everything else Egyptian. And that's exactly what we actually have in the end. Have a look at the final reconstruction they've created. This is a reconstruction with basically a semi semi-African nose, okay, but everything else is kind of like just, I don't even want to say modern Egyptian, because a lot of modern Egyptians look kind of African, just Turkish, just weird. And in the end, they kind of have what looks to me, I was looking at it today, I was like, what does this look like? Other than the fact that it barely looks human, it kind of looks like a bit like a Filipino, but I don't really know any Egyptians who look like this. I don't know any North Africans who look like this. I don't know any East. It just looks completely out of the region. But that's because they're trying to mix apples and oranges. They kind of want to have their cake and not eat it. You know, they want to have their cake and eat it. They want to have this kind of like, let's get this mixed nose going. Yeah, let's mix up the ethnicity. Let's get a bit of black going with the nose, okay? Because that will make it look more like the statues. But then with everything else, we'll keep it there, and we'll make sure the complexion is right back in line with what everyone's used to. We're even given that same buzz cut hairstyle that we've done on all the other reconstructions, and hopefully this one will be more credible than the last one. It's kind of like, well, it's not. It just looks weird, you know? Just looks a bit weird. So where were we? Sorry. There. So yeah, that's what I wanted to give you, that part about the nose, because I thought that was quite funny. A base template for the projection is available at blah 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 blah. Once the projection of the nose was established, they still haven't given any reasoning, by the way. They've just mentioned the fact that we took 204 for everything for our donor. We took 204 adult Egyptians, apart from the nose, where we decided to mix and blend, and they don't give any reason for it. They just decided to do that. Once the projection of the nose was established, a profile was drawn using the limits of the pronasal point and soft tissue thickness markers as a reference to cover the regions not, and to complement the volumetric approximation. The mesh of a vital donor composed of soft tissue, skull and endocranium was imported and positioned in the same space as the skull of Tutankhamun. So it's talking about this, the import of the donor here. Structural deformations are performed, so this is what I explained earlier, on the mesh in order to convert the donor's skull into the skull of the individual to be approximated. As a side effect, the soft tissue mesh also suffers such deformation, resulting in a face with the characteristics of Tutankhamun. And an African, and a mixed nose, which is the only part that actually looks like Tutankhamun. The rest of it doesn't. Although the neck region did not undergo major changes, the most important part of the process generated a profile that was very compatible with the projection made from soft tissue thickness markers. Now, on the neck point, guys, I want you to look at something here as well, because I'm glad they brought up the neck, because I would have forgotten otherwise. Now, here's a massive problem with what they're doing. We already speak about the fact that, you know, Tutankhamun's skull has this huge rear projection. Okay, this is a typically dolichocephalic skull, as we discussed already. Even the one they've scanned here probably is slightly outside of the range of dolichocephaly, but it still projects out to the rear much more than your average skull. Okay, when I say average skull, your average Eurasian skull. Okay, now what you'll notice here, we talked about it yesterday, Monday, the fact that they will overload it, yeah, with this kind of like fatness to kind of hide the fact that basically you got a bean head. Yeah, now what is the problem with this? The issue is they're trying to make a African skull or dolichocephalic skull appear Eurasian. Okay, now pay attention to this. They're trying to make it appear Eurasian. But what's one of the problems? One of the problems is you've got this huge cavity at the back. Now everybody, including fat people, are able to feel their spinal cord right at the base of their neck. I'm sure if you guys just put your hand behind your neck right now, right at the base of your neck, you can feel this bone over here. You should be able to feel that. Why is there a 3-inch gap even here on the slimmed down version? Why is there almost a 2-inch gap, yeah, between the spinal cord and the back of the neck? No one has that. No one has just 2 inches of flibby flab just floating around the back of their neck. Now, why does that exist? It's because they're trying to make a dolichocephalic skull look brachycephalic. And let me just quickly give you what I mean when I say this, because this will really illustrate it for you. I'm just going to type in profile excuse me, sorry, 1 second. Profile side view Turkish man. I just want to give you an example. Now, you see that I haven't typed in anything special. I just said profile side view of a Turkish man, and you're going to see what I mean by brachycephalic skulls. Okay, you got one on the screen right here. Okay, this is a brachycephalic skull. Okay, all of these, in fact, are brachycephalic skulls. Now, you notice they go straight down at the back. That's what optically we are used to seeing in the phenotype that they're trying to present to you here. Okay, a skull that kind of goes straight down or almost straight down at the back. Okay, that's where, but because that's actually where the skull is, that is also where the spinal column is. Okay, that's why they'll be able to feel their spinal bone here. What you'll find with this reconstruction of King of Tutankhamun is they're trying to make it appear brachycephalic, like he hasn't got a bean head, so they're dropping his neck here. But the problem with that is it puts his spinal column in the middle of his neck, where his throat's supposed to be. Now, I find it difficult that they don't know this. Like, this is passing. This is passing. I find that that's that's not where your spinal column is supposed to be. Okay, your spinal column is this, then the neck should be running along here. Okay, at the back, not right in the dead center. You know, this is peculiar the way this is all put together. Okay, and that's because, as you can see here, they're trying to make a dolichocephalic skull, a typical African beanhead, appear like your more mesocephalic / brachycephalic person of this region. Okay, where the back of the head is much flatter. Okay, it's just regional differences. Once again, I'm not sitting here trying to say one's better than the other. I'm absolutely not saying that, so please don't take that from that. But it is a difference. And if King Tutankhamun's skull doesn't fit this phenotype, you just have to accept that. Okay, you just have to accept that. You can't, and you're going to see they've done this with Amenhotep III. This is basically what they've done with Amenhotep III when they put that fat dude around him, and then they tried to make out like he had no, you know, the back of his skull pokes out. That's just an African trait. We have that. Okay, you can't hide it with neck fat. Hope for the best. It doesn't work, because neck fat doesn't even work that way. Okay, so this is, yeah, I just wanted to show that really quickly, because they mentioned the way they wrap it around the neck, and I thought I'd actually mention that because they're showing something in the wrong space. Where are we? So actually no, we could go on, and they talk about the fact they use grayscale, but we covered this in the other stream, so I kind of want to stop there. But now we've been through that, you guys have seen the process. I know that took a little while, and hopefully I haven't lost too many of you, because that was a bit dry, I know that. But I want to show you my reconstruction now, because what we want to do is we want to do a bit of a comparison, because we know we've looked at the Amenhotep III reconstruction that they created. Okay, and what we want to do now is we want to run a bit of a comparison, because can the reconstructions that I've created also work when laid down in comparison to the mummies and laid down in comparison to the scans? And let's see if that is actually the case. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a quick digest of the, sorry, just bear with me as I kind of pull it up on my screen. Just having a bit of a mental block here as to where I saved those things. Sorry, bear with me, guys. Having a bit of a brain block. Okay, let's pull up the article instead. Just realised a lot of the images are saved on my phone, and I haven't got my phone connected. So, how's that for preparation? Don't worry, it'll take me a second. I want to find the one with the most images that I can share with you guys. Okay, so if worst comes to worst, it's alright, we can live without it. Let's pull this up again. Got to open that in a new tab. I'm also going to, I know you're not seeing anything at the screen anymore, just bear with me. Tab. Yep. Hey, look at that, I just googled and my YouTube thumbnail came up like nearly top. that must really be pissing them off. Okay, what was I looking for? This is what I was looking for. So yeah, there we go. Okay, and that, perfect. Okay, so I just wanted to find a few of the overlays that they've done, and then that will give us the opportunity for me to share my process. All right, so let me open that in a new tab and open that in a new tab, and we're good to go. Okay, so first of all, we'll start off with this image. Oh no, just pulled the wrong one up. Supposed to be this one. Okay, let's start off with this image. So we start off with this image. We saw it yesterday, on Tuesday when we covered this. Okay, just so you can see the views, okay, of the reconstruction. So I'm just gonna quickly, I know I was paused for a lot of them, I'm just gonna quick have a look through the comments, see if I've missed anything. I am, yeah, very, very sick of missing people's donations and then having to do next day shout outs and thank yous to people who donate. I'm so notoriously, especially when I get into a zone, I just don't look for ages. I remember one time I was doing a live stream and everyone was like, King, we can't see the screen, we can't see this, you're blocking. I was blocking the screen with a comment, and I think it was the one I did on forensic facial reconstruction. And I was talking about the what's it called, the Fayum portraits, and I was grilling them, you know, on how bad these reconstructions were or whatever, and you guys couldn't even see what I was doing. So yeah, you know what I get like. All right, where was I? All right, so there we are. So we've got these reconstructed Amenhotep III images here, and just so we know how they got here, let's have a look at, we know the process now, we've kind of gone over that, but let's have a look also at I keep taking the wrong screen. What screen is that open? There it is. This one. Here it is. So this is a scan of Amenhotep's skull. Okay, so once again, I think they're using the same process once again, where they're not actually, I think they're actually just taking existing images and then building profiles around them. So the interesting thing is I did a similar thing. Okay, a few things to note on this skull is the mouth is open. So that's one of the things that I noted on this image anyway. And it kind of looks like you used the same image that I used. but he probably used quite a few more. I'd imagine he would have got access to scan it himself, but this is the same image. This is an available image, and then it's quite an old one as well. And then you can see this overlaid version of the image here. Let me open this in a new tab. Okay, where you can see their 3D version overlaid. Oh, what the? Sorry, open image in new tab. Will it let me do that? Yes. Sorry. So I just want to kind of zoom in here so you guys can see that. So this image here, you can see basically how they've built it around the skull. Now, this is their 3D skull. Now, I want you to just compare quickly 3D skull with actual skull. And the reason I want to compare those is because I think there's been a little bit of trickery. That's, well, not trickery, it could have just been a mistake, to be totally honest with you. But what you'll notice is that the maxillary region, which is this kind of like top, this kind of like just below the nasal region, it goes straight down. Do you notice that? It goes straight down here. And then this bottom region over here, the mandibular region as well, shoots straight up vertically. Okay, now you might look at this and think, well, that seems reasonable. It looks like they kind of go straight down and straight up, and that's not actually true. And I'll tell you why that isn't true. I'm going to quickly share an image with you. Okay, because this is quite important. So this is the image I started with as well. And what you'll notice is, let me zoom in. Okay, from front view, oh, this is my augmented version. Let me give you the original version. Sorry, bear with me. In fact, I can just pull that one up. Go back one, I think. No. Forward one. No. Doing spoilers here. Oh, this is so annoying. Giving you everything that you need to see now. You've got no reason to be on the stream. Really annoying. Where is that image? Maybe I didn't have it saved. Okay, it's somewhere else. It's not in that folder. Spoiled for no reason. Here we go. All right. Thank you for your patience, guys. All right, here it is. So, if you look at the original mummy of Amenhotep III, it's really badly damaged around the front teeth. You can see not only is all the front teeth missing, all of them, some of the mandible is missing. It's kind of been chopped or broken off, and some of the lower jaw. So when you look at it, what you're actually looking at there is there's a hole, okay, just like here. So you're seeing the side view of a hole. Can you see that? Yeah, front view of the hole, side view of the hole. So what he's actually done, which I think was a little bit sneaky, is I can see that basically, one second, where's my mouse? There you go. I can see that basically this should be jutting forward slightly. You can see it from the angle of this tooth over here. So you would have had overbite here, and you would have had some maxillary prognathism here. And I think the same would have happened. You can see there's a curve to the bottom row where that would have ended up being slightly forward. What he's actually done is he's just shaved them all straight down. So it's almost like the teeth ended where they were broken. So one of the big things that I changed when I did my version of it is I restored the teeth to how I thought they should look. So let me go back to my spoiler. No, actually, no, I'm not going to go back to my spoiler. Let me open up a new one. You guys are all just pressing rewind and pausing now, aren't you? And then there's just no point in you being on this stream. Don't worry, I'll be done soon. So when I did my version here, keep going to the wrong folder. This is the longest wait you guys have probably had. Okay, here we go. So when I did my version here, where's it gone? Okay, here we go. We'll get there in the end. When I did my version here, you can see I've kind of built it back slightly there, but what I did is I did an overlay and reshaped a couple of skeletons to give you back the shape that I felt had been lost with the front teeth being knocked out. So you can see there's the gap where they've been knocked out, but you can see the angle, and you can see the angle of the bottom, and you can see that you would have had some, oh god, there's a spoiler right there. You would have had some angle in there. So that's what I presume the restoration should have been. Okay. You also note that I closed the mouth. Okay, so I closed the mouth, which was slightly open, and what I had to do also was tilt the skull down, because the original image is like this, and that's all they've given you, is a tilted upward skull. So I had to rotate the skull downwards and then use that as a guide to what the face would look like facing forward. So you can see it's tilted upwards there. They match in terms of height, so you know there's to scale. Okay, I then had to tilt this skull downwards so it's facing forward, not facing upwards like it is, and then that gave me the scale to be able to know what the face should look like facing forward. Does that make sense? I'm kind of talking and hoping that my words are hitting home there. So in the end, this was my approximations for the front facing and the side facing skull of Amenhotep III. Okay, it's only slightly different. The only difference I have between my one and their one is that I have a different angling for the teeth, bearing in mind that hole being filled out, whereas they just kind of ignored the hole and just said, yep, straight up, straight down. And also just looking at the familial traits as well of the Armala lineage, they all have teeth like that. Okay, it's not like a one-off. I mean, I could pull up KV55 or any of the other mummies and you'll see. In fact, let's just do that really quickly. We could pull up KV55's skull over here. And you can see that they all possess that maxillary overjet and that mandibular kind of like, there's always the tilt forward, okay? In terms of the teeth, you don't get that just that straight down effect in any of them. So I felt like this was the correct orientation of the teeth. So now that I had that in place, we come on to the reconstructions, which you guys have already slightly seen. And it was important for me because you guys know I've had my reconstruction for Amenhotep III for a little while now. And it really was a challenge because Cicero said to me, well, it doesn't work. You know, you guys, you know, you're saying you use the statues, but the statues don't work. And that was an interesting, you know, I can't just turn around and say you're talking rubbish if I haven't tried it. So for me, it was important for me to take his word and say, okay, well, he's claiming it doesn't work. Can I make it work? Can I prove him wrong? Does it work? Or is he unaware that it works? So that's where my process went next. So I essentially, you guys have seen all of my reconstructions of Amenhotep III. And the first thing I needed to do was to make the skull overlay. So if I just quickly jump back a couple. Okay. There's my bold Amenhotep. So there's my Amenhotep. Okay. And I made him bold so that I could run the overlay correctly. Kind of got a two-pack head. Bit of a short forehead, I have to say. But this is where it was. And then I wanted to see that. And then I had to overlay that to see if it worked. So this is the overlaid skull, front face and side face of Amenhotep. Okay. So there's front face and side face of Amenhotep. And the alignment was quite strong. Quite strong. This required very little amendment from the original. Okay. Very, very little amendment. And bear in mind, when I do my reconstructions, the starting place for me is always the artwork. Okay? The starting place is always the artwork. So I start with the artwork and work from there. And you know that I try to approximate a face that essentially sits as an aggregate to all of the artwork, so that you could pull up any one of their artworks and it should still look similar or look the same. Okay, so having that overlaid, you can see there, just the lines are all there, so you can make sure that these are all literally in line. Okay, there's nothing that's been distorted or moved out of position. And then from there, that gives us, in fact, let me just quickly just move to this darker one, because it gives us a bit more visual information when you see this one as well. Okay, in terms of the sculpture, so everything seemed to work really well. One of the things actually I want to draw your attention to is that really strong zygomatic region, because Amenhotep III skull has these really strong cheekbones, like massive, strong. Look at them. You can see them. Really convex zygomatic region. Okay, very, very strong. And can you almost see it poking out the side there? You can imagine it was probably like that on both sides, but it's probably degraded somewhat over the years. But you can see that strong cheek region. Now, someone looking at that skull in isolation will go, "Oh, that's peculiar." But what's one of the most strongest features, or at least I will tell you, one of the most strongest features that I came across when I was doing Amenhotep's reconstructions, was that very triangular shape his face has a really strong cheek, and then it kind of like, he has a much more triangular face than any other Kemetic pharaoh or noble that I've done so far. And so seeing the way the skull worked in terms of his zygomatic region over here, and having that strong cheekbone that kind of lent its way down to a more narrow jaw, was actually really kind of like, that works. That really does work. Because if you have a look now, let's go through some of the reconstructions. So this is just some hairstyle ideas that I had in line with obviously what we know Amenhotep III looks like. Okay, you can see what I'm talking about in terms of that wideish kind of mid face, where he has these really strong cheekbones that kind of are out quite far, and then they come in, and he has, it's quite a triangular shape to his face. So you can see that there, but that's actually a feature of his skull. So once again, I say with the Kemetic artists, it's really hard to fault them in terms of how accurate their work is. So this, now that we know it overlays well with the skull, we can have a look at a few different renditions and see how well it meshes with the artwork. So here we have him with the Capresh, and I guess a good comparison for that would be that starting piece of artwork that we looked at. So let's just pull that up really quickly. Bear with me. Because now we can do a bit of comparison with actual artworks of Amenhotep III and see how well in line we fall with those. I'm trying to remember where I saved that image of him in the Capresh today. I did use it, so I must have it saved somewhere. Where is him in the Capresh? Because that'll be a good, here we go. So we have Amenhotep in his Capresh. Okay, I'm going to pull this to the side now. Okay, so we've got Amenhotep in his Capresh. And I know this is just a bit of stele artwork, but it's still nice to see that there is a definite affinity to his Capresh artwork now. You can see in terms of the way his face is, but bear in mind this face is, this side view is based on the skeleton now. Yeah, it's based on the mummy. So these projections that we're getting in terms of the way his face looks is what's being dictated to us from the front view and from the side view of his mummy as well. And look how well, at least in my view, look how well that meshes and matches to what they are trying to produce on the artwork. Let's carry on. Let's get another representation. So we got him here in his in his Deshret, crown of Lower Kemet. Let's get a comparative artwork to throw up. If I could find one, let's have a look. Oh man, it's getting late. That's why I'm moving slightly slower, guys. You know what it's like. Here we go. Amenhotep III. An obvious one to compare this one to, because this is actually where I started. Actually, on that note, this statue is where I started, and I guess everything kind of flowered from there. But there you go, side by side. Let's carry on. Let's try another representation, see what you can come up with. This one was a really interesting view for me. I actually really enjoyed doing this one, because this one, I think you know where I'm heading with this representation. In fact, let me just get the full one of this one. There you go, with the crown, because I think you guys know where I'm heading with this one. Okay. In fact, I can scroll across. There we go. There. So I think you guys know where I was headed with that one. And if we need to see that from side view, actually, to get a little bit more of a... The afro is a little bit looser in my version than in that one, but I think we can still get appreciation for the fact that that's kind of the same brother. Let's move that along again so we can see it there without the crown. Let's move on. Let's see what other representations we've got. I did quite a few of these, so it'll be quite a nice way to just close out. Obviously in the iconic Nemes crown. Let's see if we can find a good representation of Amenhotep in the Nemes. Oh, is it only the one? I think there's only the one I can find in the Nemes. There's one where he's young, but there's one where he's of age here. So I'll just scroll along to that one. Okay, let's just pull this one up. Let's pull this one on the screen here. So there he is in the Nemes crown. I think he was a bit younger in this representation than I've got him here. Okay, so there's a slight feature differentiation. Actually, I have a younger version of him actually. Let's pull that up actually, because that'll be interesting. So you know I like to do my age adjustments as well. So let me just quickly pull up an age adjusted version. If I have one, yeah I do. Just Okay, so here's an age adjusted version, so he's slightly younger. So you can see he looks, yeah, more in line with that one, but I think even better than that one, there's this young statue of Amenhotep III, which I'm sure you guys have seen before, which really does look, I think, really strongly like this young version of Amenhotep III. Now bear in mind, this is just AI, age adjustment, nothing more. And this is an actual statue of him when he's younger. And to me, if that is not vindication of the fact that it's the same person, i.e. when they were doing their artworks, they were quite clearly depicting the same person, then someone has to explain to me how when I age adjust it downwards, it looks exactly like artwork of him when he was younger. Someone has to explain that. So in fact it says Jericho juice dripping. I don't know why the Jericho felt right. I don't know why, it just felt right. But yeah, so this is one of my favorite age adjustments actually, because it's kind of like, yeah, it's the same kid. Could make the ears a bit larger, but bear in mind I haven't physically manipulated this one at all, so I haven't had a chance to run this through my photo editing software and actually make it match this. This is just took the older statue, made it younger, and there you go, looks exactly the same, which is very, very vindicating. Jonathan, thank you for your $2 donation. He says Cicero might be worried about his job. No, he's good. He's not worried. He's not being paid by people with integrity, so I don't think they're gonna need me screwing up their whole 200-year-old institution, you know. Oh lordy. I do have a good time on these streams. Thank you guys for your patience, by the way. I know I've been a little bit finicky backward and forward. Let me carry on. I think there's a few more representations. So we got the Nemes there. We've hit up Jericho Amenhotep. Well, it should be, yeah, someone actually said this, they use butter, don't they? The Beja use it. I know the Afar use the butter as well. A lot of Sahelians use the butter, so it's kind of like they got this hair butter going on. We've looked at a Capresh. Got bald Amen. Do we have any bald Amenhoteps to compare to? That would be good. Let me have a look at my representation. I don't think we do. It's a shame. It would be nice if we had a bald Amenhotep to run a comparison to. And then we got this representation. Do we have this anywhere? I think the closest we'll get to that is once again that this representation here, which isn't quite the same, but it's always it feels like it's always kind of like variations of some kind of twist going on when I see this. Okay, some kind of African twist going on, like a full-bodied twist. And I think that's what inspired me to do him in this kind of Afar style over here. I felt like it could be that, it could be that the version that I showed you before, the more kind of Jerry Curl drop version. But either which way, I feel really comfortable in how he's presented here. Especially since now we have confluence with the skull, confluence with all of the different elements kind of coming together. It's nice. Natural juices and berries. I know you're probably being serious there, musicologist, but that just makes me think of coming to America even more. We've gone from Soul Glow to the natural juices and berries of King. What's his name? Joffrey Jaffa was his dad. What was his name again? What was Eddie Murphy's character's name? I can't remember. Mystery, thank you so much for your $50 donation. Thank you. Says the plant reveals what was in the seed. Sounds like a very deep proverb. I'm guessing relating to what I'm doing here. If that's gone over my head, the plant reveals. Well, yeah, of course. Yes, that makes sense. Sorry. It's because it's 11 o'clock over here and I start to lose my bearings a little bit. But yeah, there you go. So let's just quickly, actually, we're close to wrapping up now. I just want to just quickly scroll forward once again to the overlays. Okay. So process once again was to get the skulls, to orient them downwards in this case and forward in this case. Then to build a skeletal mesh which restored the missing teeth, which was more important for the side view than the front view, so that we got the orthographic projection correct. Okay. And then that allowed me to do my side construction and my front view reconstruction as well. And hopefully have things that are in the right place. Not have to hide the fact that he's got a African head shape. Okay. Actually be quite proud of that, and spinal column in the correct position, which is always nice and important to see. And facial features in the correct position as well. We noted some of the features that kind of poke through, such as that very strong zygomatic region. And yeah, what can I say? I think it could work. I think it could work in this regard. I'm really happy with it, because there's always a chance that when you run your reconstruction and you overlay it with a skull, a lot of people think that it's just kind of like it's a given. You could kind of get any skull to match any face, and that's not true. Okay, it can be incredibly misaligned to the point where you can't make one face compatible with another. Okay, as you're seeing happen with these reconstructions of Tutankhamun, where he keeps looking like an alien because they can't get him to look right as a Eurasian person, because he's an African. He'll only look natural when he's an African, you know. So yeah, that's where we are. Let's actually just have a quick, since we covered so much King Tutankhamun today, it only seems right that we close out on my latest reconstructions of him, which I'm sure you've all seen, because this been pretty much all of the content that I've posted for the last few drops. But let's just have a quick review of the latest King Tutankhamun work, because it'll be nice to pull that up alongside what they've done there and see where perhaps there could be hopefully something that they could learn from what we're doing, you know. Where are they? Here we go, tuck complete, that's it. No, that's just one image. Okay, let me try. Maybe it's this one. Throne pose. Okay, here we go. Oh, so you've probably seen my short where I did a reconstruction of King Tut on the golden throne. That might be a good place for us to start, because we get to see him in his full glorious side view. If I can find the image, it's here. Here we go. So I'll just pull that onto the screen. So you've probably all seen the short. I felt inspired to do a full a full-bodied reconstruction of King Tut in his throne pose. So I'll just pull up his golden throne side by side, so you can see what I was trying to recreate there. And just bear in mind, the face that you're seeing here, once again, is one that I've adhered to the skull. So it isn't just a kind of like, this is what I kind of hope he looks like. This is more what I've calculated, or at least seen he would have looked like, bearing in mind how he overlays with the skull approximations. I'm trying to see if I've actually got an overlaid version to show you all. I don't think I do. I've got the video. If you want to see an overlaid version, oh no, here we go. I do have one. Let me pull it up quickly. So I'll just quickly pull up the 2x2 here. I know my PC is gonna start to crash soon. There is the, let me just quickly full screen this. So there is the front and the side view of King Tutankhamun, and then I have a overlaid. I thought I had an overlaid version, but clearly did not. I can just kind of show you the skull that I started out with, so I'll just pull it up on the screen. And I'll have to say, you guys are going to have to trust me that it overlays, because I can't pull it up right now. But that overlays perfectly. You can see his very long skull. Okay, you can see there's no attempt to give him a fat neck to hide it. Okay, and there it is. So that's how that fits, and then that's obviously been used, and that's what I've used to. I just did a larger version of that in order to do him in his throne pose. So it's this whole idea of us trying to bring and consolidate everything together, not just to have a single view of what these great Africans look like, but actually to see if we can kind of consolidate and bring all of the statues together, all of the artworks together, all of the depictions together, and make everything work and actually have a better representation. So hopefully what we're doing is going to start having an impact on the way that they view African history, and they'll start to give respect to many of our features that they currently ignoring or choosing to class as anomalies. You know, they'll start to give Africans credit for our, you know, the things that we exhibit, like our dolichocephalic head shapes, or our wonderful strong cheekbones, our maxillary prognathism, and our overjet, our overbite, our diastole, all of these things that we've covered in so much detail, I guess, over the last few live streams. Hopefully they'll start to get credence. But I think on that note, we're good. I think on that note, we'll call it a day. It's after 11 o'clock here now. It was supposed to be a short stream. I spent much longer reading that paper than I thought I was going to. So yeah, that was kind of my bad. It was supposed to be like a quick introduction, and then we were going to dive into my reconstructions, and that was the whole point. But I guess we got where we got in the end, and I'm happy with it. And I'm also really grateful for the many generous donations. Please, yeah, thank you, all of you who've donated. Jonathan, Mystery, Kandar. I'm scrolling up. I'm gonna run out of names because it doesn't only lets me scroll up so far. Kang, make sure you hit me up on the on Discord so I can get back to you regarding some of your queries. Stephen, as always, and everyone else who donated above. I think there was Macy. No, let me not try and guess, because I'm just going to miss people out and that'll be wrong. So thank you if you donated. You know who you are. I appreciate you. I thank you, everyone, for joining me today. I think we'll wrap it up and call it a day there. I hope it hasn't been too dry. I've enjoyed myself, even though I've been a little bit all over the place. But I think we got there in the end. Hit a like. Leave me some feedback in the comments. I always review these live streams afterwards, as you can see, because I normally miss donations amongst other things. But leave me a comment and I will read it. Obviously, when I can't read them live, is what it is. Or leave me a comment in the main video itself. Hit likes up on that as well, so it gets some positive feedback. And I think, yeah, on that note, we'll call it a day. Have a fantastic day, evening, night, morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Thank you guys. All the best.